All right, in this video, we're going to walk through how to use Python to open and start to do a little bit of analysis on PDF documents. In this example, we'll be using a document from the College of William and Mary that details its finances. And there's a table on page 9 that gives a little bit more information about the specifics of its finances. That is, the sources of income split between graduate students and undergraduate students. And so in this hypothetical, we're going to want to extract that data into something we can use programmatically. Let's go ahead and jump over into Jupyter. So, in this hypothetical, we have a single PDF that we want to read in using Python and actually do some quick analysis with. Now, in practice, it's extremely rare that you would actually only do this with one PDF document. And much more traditionally, you would have hundreds, if not thousands of these that you want to automatically go through and do an analysis for every single one. Now, we're not in a position to do that yet. It's going to take a while. So we're just going to teach you guys how to do the very, very first PDF. So here's Jupyter. I'm going to go ahead and go to New, and then Python 3. Here's my new Jupyter notebook, and you'll see it's untitled at the top. I'm going to go ahead and give this a name. We'll call it PDF Data Import. Rename this. And then what we're going to do is the first thing that we will have to do is actually download the PDF data itself. So to do that, we're going to import a module called requests. You'll remember imports. These are effectively the same as kind of programs or apps. They let us do kind of unique things within Python. The URL that we're going to request is the URL that the actual PDF lives at. So this is if you go to this URL in your browser, you'll actually see the PDF that I showed you just a moment ago. And so all we have to do is we have to request that URL and then write the contents of that URL to a file. So first and foremost, again, we want to save URL. So just to show you guys, I'm going to click run here. And then if we type in print URL, we've now saved in the variable called URL this text string. I could call this anything I wanted. So I could call this apples. And when I print, I could print apples. And it will print the same exact thing. It does not matter what this variable name is called, as long as it has this string of information in it. For the ease of my sanity, I'm going to go back to URL. Now we're going to do the request to get it. So we'll call this variable R, again, completely arbitrary. And we'll do requests.get URL. So we're using this app, this module that we've downloaded called requests. We're using that to call a special function called get, something we don't even have to worry about writing, and then URL. What that will do is it will download the contents of this particular website. Now we need to save that to a file. Now this is a little bit messy, but just bear with me for a moment. With open./fiscal.wm.pdf WB at r.content. Okay, so here's what we're doing here. I'm going to walk through this step by step, so don't worry too much if this looks, kind of crazy to you. First, what we're telling Python to do is to open a new file, and this is a file on our local computer. We're telling it to open this file right here, which of course does not exist. This is not a file that exists anywhere on our computer right now. The / says to put it in the same folder as this script is running in. And I just named this arbitrarily, fiscal_WM. You could put whatever you want here as long as you remember it. And then .pdf, because I know that I'm downloading a PDF file. Here, I'm telling it to be able to write to that file. So you don't worry about the details here. WB is just what you put to write a new file. As F is just a shorthand way so that on the next line, I can say at that file, which I'm now calling F, write r.content. And r.content is what is the information being held in R after we do the request. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And just like that, we now have a new file that we've created, fiscal_wm.pdf, and that is the same as the PDF you saw at the beginning. The only thing that's changed is this is now saved on our local computer. So we now have a local copy of that PDF that we can use to do our analysis with. Now, this snippet right here, we now don't have to run this again. We've now saved this on our local computer. So there's no reason that we actually have to run this ever again because we already have it saved. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the rest of this in the next snippet down. So we're going to start down here so that we don't rerun this by accident. Now you can rerun this, it's not going to hurt anything, but if you do it too much, at some point the website virginia.gov will prevent you from downloading any more. It'll assume that you're a virus or attacking their system in some way. So down here, we're going to actually start the analysis of this PDF. Now, to do this, there's a couple of things that we'll have to import. The first is pandas. So just like we've done before, we're going to import pandas as PD. And then the second one is one we haven't used before. So import PDF Plumber. And PDF Plumber is a well-named module that will let us actually analyze this PDF document. Now, we also have to do one other thing, which is we have to put what's called a magic command. Don't worry at all about what this is. It's kind of a special thing we have to do because we're working in Jupyter Hub to later on at the very end of this video actually create some visualizations. This will make sure that those visualizations pop out correctly. So you just put this at the top of your Jupyter. I am in the habit of personally always putting this at the top of my Jupyter scripts. It makes things much easier. Now, when we run this the first time, we're actually going to need to install PDF Plumber, or it's just going to tell us that that module doesn't exist. So to do that, we're going to do it the same way we did before. I'm going to click plus up here to create a new snippet for myself. And then down here, I'm going to type in !pip install PDF Plumber. And I'm going to click run. And that will briefly go through. And as you can see on my computer, the requirements are already satisfied. That means I've already installed it before. For you, this may take a minute because you'll actually have to go through and install this particular module. Now, once it installs, at the very bottom it will say successful. You can delete this snippet. You no longer need it. You'll only need this when you need to reinstall PDF Plumber, which should be very, very rare. So you can click on this, and you can click this little scissors button to delete it. Alternatively, you can just, highlight it and hit backspace. It's really up to you. I'm going to go ahead and delete it just to clean things up. So this should now work correctly. So I'm going to click run. And there we go. So this in6, it's no longer a little star, so I know this ran correctly. Now I can use these modules. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the fiscal WM document that I created up here. And I want to make sure that I can read it in Python. So I'm going to call this variable, again, completely arbitrary, PDF equals PDF plumber.open. And then I'm going to name this the same as I did before, fiscal wm.pdf. And so this will open up that PDF. And you can see this little star, and now it's done. So it's already processed this PDF. I don't have any errors, so that means it found it and was able to load it. Now, specifically on this particular document, the table that I want to extract, the table that you see now, that table is on page 9 of the document. Now, here's something weird. Python starts counting at 0. So that means if I want something on page 9, I need to tell Python to look at page 8 because it counts the first page of the document as page 0. So I'm going to go ahead and load in page 9, which again will be called page 8 from the PDF I just loaded. So pdf.pages, and then I'm going to choose page 8. Page 8. So this will actually give me the PDF page. So I'm going to run this. You can see it's already done. Down here, just for illustration, I'm going to type in page. And you'll see this actually shows me this is now a page that has been loaded into PDF Plumber. So I can use this for analysis. Now what I want to do is on that page, I want to actually identify the table. So I'm going to type in table equals page.extract table. And what this will do is just like you might guess, it will extract the table that I want. I'm going to print this just so you can see what happens. So voila. We now have on the 8th page, we've extracted the first table in this case, and it gave us this information. And you can see this information is very, very similar to what you see in the table itself. However, this is obviously not something we could use for analysis. There's plenty of problems within this data frame. So we're going to go through and start to learn how to fix a lot of these problems and actually get this into a suitable state for analysis. The way that we do that, we'll be using a pandas data frame in conjunction with some of the kind of data cleaning elements that are built into Pandas. So I'm going to get rid of this print table for now, because we won't be looking at the data like that really anymore. And what I want to do instead is load this data, the data you see right here, into a Pandas data frame. So let's just call it df for data frame equals pd.dataframe table. And so this is telling it to take this table data here, and convert it into a Pandas data frame. I'll go ahead and type in df as well, so that way we can print out the data frame and see what happens when I run this. So I'm going to click run. And here we go. So this is now the same exact data, but loaded into a Pandas data frame. And you can see we're starting to get closer. Obviously, there's still some data problems within this particular data frame, but we're getting closer to what we might actually want. So let's look at some really simple things that we can do to go ahead and start to clean up this data set. The first thing that we might immediately consider doing is something like getting rid of these 3 empty rows, right? These 3 empty rows are kind of not rows that actually contain any data. So that's very simple to do, and we're going to go ahead and do that here. And we'll do clean. I'm going to call this cleaner data, and this just says to get rid of the first 3 rows. So what this is actually saying is saying take this data frame. So this df right here is the same data frame as this, exactly what we're looking at here. It's saying look at this data frame and look at the iloc. This is short for index location 3. Indexes are the rows here. So it's going to look at index 3. And then that little colon means take 3 and everything after it. So it's going to take the data frame and it's going to look at all of that information below the number 3. And it's going to remove all of this because I'm telling it to ignore anything 0, 1, and 2. So my new data frame is going to start at row, what is currently index 3. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And then we'll go ahead and print out the cleaner data just to illustrate what just happened. And voila, so we now no longer have those kind of empty rows that we had before. Now let's say that just for the sake of illustration, that we want to try to visualize this data, right? So our ultimate goal is to create, let's call it a pie chart that goes through and it tells us just for tuition revenue, right? What are the major sources of revenue for the College of William and Mary? So to do that, we actually want to use a built-in Pandas capability, which is the plot.py. So we can take this data frame, for example, and we can plug this in here, and we can try to actually create a pie chart. You'll see here, I have gross tuition /n revenue. I've literally copy and pasted that from here, right? So I see like this is the column that I want to use the data out of, so I'm going to copy it up here. Now, right now, this is not going to work, right? There are still some fundamental errors that we need to fix before this particular line of code will work, but I want to show you this error and a couple of other errors that are going to pop up so that you know how to debug them in the future. So the first thing I'll do is go ahead and run this. And here's the error. So in Pandas and Python more generally, errors are very, very detailed. Generally, there's relatively little information that you need, and generally that information is going to be at the very bottom. So in this case, we have this, a key error, gross tuition /revenue. What this means is that when I told it to make a pie chart out of this particular column, it couldn't find this column. So this is the problem that we need to find. I'll go into a lot more detail about how this works specifically once we get to the point where we'll have a working pie chart. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this for now. So let's take another look at our cleaner data. And we're going to try to figure out why when I try to make a pie chart does it say that this doesn't exist, because it clearly does exist here. So the specific challenge when you see a key error like that, that means that it's looking for something in the headers. So right now my headers are the 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? So if I were to try to do anything with this column of data, I would need to call this column of data the number 1. Instead of gross tuition and revenue, which obviously I want the title to be this. Further, right now, this data frame is treating this first column of data as if it was really data, right? It doesn't understand this is a title of a column. It actually assumes that this is a dollar value amount for some subset of data. It just doesn't make any sense right now. So what we want to do is we want to move this up to here. We want to turn this into the title of this particular column. At any point, you can always see what your current column names are by doing this. So when I did that, what you'll see is this range index, start 0, stop 5, step 1. This means that it's a numeric index, right? It doesn't have any names. It's literally the number 0 to the number 5, which is not, at all what we want right now. So let's go ahead and do the code to move this first column up. So to do that is reasonably straightforward. I'm going to go ahead and create a new data set. So we're going to call this cleaner data 2. And we're going to set that equal to the original cleaner data, but we're going to rename those columns. So in this case, we're going to set the columns equal to cleaner data.iloc0. And so what this is saying is to create a new data frame, cleaner data 2, set it equal to the original data frame, but the original data frame with renamed columns, where we're going to set these columns equal to the cleaner data iloc0. And iloc0 is the first row of data in this particular case. So we'll go ahead and run this. And let's take a look and see what came out. Here we go. So now look, our headers are getting, much closer to what we would want. This is almost done, but there's one problem, which is that these are still here. So there's still a row of data that's incorrect. All we've done is copy these up. We haven't removed them from the data itself. So to do that, we're going to drop this first row of data. So that will be very, very similar to what we just did. I'm going to do cleaner data, cleaner data 3, and we'll set that equal to cleaner data 2 dot drop. So we want to drop this row because this is not real data. So cleaner data dot 2 dot drop, cleaner data 2, and dot index 0. And so this actually says, okay, go in and remove from this data frame the first index, the first row. And so that will create cleaner data 3, cleaner data 3, cleaner data 3. And there we go. So now we have, a data frame that looks much more reasonable. And as you can see, it's something that's very, very similar to what we actually see in the data on the PDF. We're very, very close to being able to use this data to actually do an analysis, to create our pie chart of where does William and Mary's money come from. But before we do that, we have one more problem that we have to solve. And that is this dollar sign is not actually a number. This comma is not actually a number. So let me show you the error that will actually come out when we try to run anything with this data. So we'll do cleaner data. This time we're going to do cleaner data 3. And again, all I'm trying to do is create a pie chart using this data set. And again, it is going to fail. So down at the very bottom, again, these very, very long errors, you don't have to worry about most of it. Down here, type error, less than, not supported between instances of string and integer. So it's telling me it's trying to do some mathematical operation on a string, which obviously I don't want it to do that. I want all of these to be numbers. And so this is the hint where it says this string that there's some sort of problem here. And again, by looking at the data frame, you can see the problem in this case is dollar signs and commas are not numbers. We need all of this to be numbers. So we're going to clean this up. So what we're going to do is create a new copy of our data frame. We'll call it cleaner data 4, cleaner data 3. And just for the sake of making sure that we know what's going on, I'm going to go ahead and print out the column names of that new data frame. There we go. So this is our new column names. It should be, otherwise it's going to be identical to data 3, right? There's not going to be any other differences. We just have these column names. So what I am, again, looking at is the gross tuition revenue. So I'm going to copy this column name. This almost identical, but this little \n will cause problems if we don't actually include it. So I'm going to do cleaner data 4. And this is the one column that I want to change, right? I'm going to leave this column alone, this first column. I'm not going to change these columns over here. I'm only going to change this one column of data. And I want to set that equal to the same column of data in my original data frame. So this is cleaner data 3. Again, that's the same here, the one with the dollar signs and the commas. And this is cleaner data 4, the new one that we're seeking to make. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to replace, first of all, the $ with basically nothing. So we're going to go to, we type in .str to tell it we want to do something to a string in the data frame. And then we're going to do .replace, because we want to replace something. And we're going to replace the $ with nothing. So when we do this, go ahead and run this, and we'll look at cleaner data 4. We now see here, I'm going to go ahead and delete this. So when we run this, and we take a look at cleaner data 4 here, what we're going to see is that we've gotten rid of the $, right? There's no longer any $. Now, that's not perfect, right? We still need to actually get rid of the commas as well. So to get rid of the commas is pretty straightforward. We're over here again, we're going to keep adding on to this. We're going to type in .str again, and we're going to do .replace again, and we're going to put the comma and nothing. So the first time we're saying get rid of the $, the second time we're saying get rid of the commas. So I'm going to go ahead and run that, and we'll look at it again. And here we go. So the same values, but now we have no $ and no commas. The last thing that we'll do is we'll type in .as type, and then in parentheses, float. And this will actually tell it to interpret these as numbers. This is optional in some cases, but we'll do it just to be safe. I'm going to go ahead and run this whole line of code. So we'll run it, and we'll take a look at our cleaner data 4. And this is now a column of data that's really in good shape for us to be able to use to create our pie chart. So finally, let's go back to this actual pie chart command. So we have our cleaner data 4. Go ahead and put this here. And so this particular command, we're telling it to take the data frame cleaner data 4, this data frame right here, plot a pie chart where the variable that we're plotting is this gross tuition and revenue, right? So this column of data is the column of data we want. And then the figure size, I believe this is specified in inches in this particular case. So we're going to go ahead and run this just to take a look at what this looks like. And here we go. So this is our first pie chart actually using this information. So we've gone and visualized this data out of the PDF using this inbuilt pie chart capability of Pandas. However, obviously this is not quite where we would want it to be. We do want to be able to see, for example, what is this class 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11? We don't know what these numbers mean. They're very arbitrary. We want them to be labeled. So what we need to do is, you'll remember, just like here, when we had these headers were in the data, right now these titles are also in the data. So for example, graduate in state, right now this is 6. So the number 6 up here, this little sliver of green, is how much money William & Mary gets from graduate students coming from within the state of Virginia. So we want to replace this number 6 with the actual label, graduate in state. So to do that, thankfully, is fairly easy. So here we can see the column of data that we want to use for these labels is currently called TNF used for financial aid. Now this is obviously not, the appropriate column title. It's just what actually kind of fell into the data frame. But irrespective, we know this is what it's called. That's the title we need. So what we're going to do is let's go ahead and add a cleaning data 5. And what we use is set index. And to set the index, we're going to put the title of the column that we want. So we'll put that right here. Now, don't worry about these brackets. You'll always want these brackets. There's some specialized purposes when you might do some more complicated stuff with them, but this makes a list effectively, but we have a list of one thing, so it doesn't really matter. But you need the brackets and the parentheses. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And then let's take a look at our cleaner data 5. And here we go. So now our indexes are named correctly and our headers are named correctly. In the gross tuition revenue, all of these numbers are correct. So we should be able to create our pie chart with, just about everything we need. So let's go ahead and add that back in. So here we're going to use cleaner data 5, and we'll go ahead and plot this particular plot. So I'm going to run this. And here we go. So now we have our labeled data. However, when we take a look at this, what we quickly notice is that we accidentally included these rows of total and in-state subtotal. So we do want to remove those to actually get rid of these particular rows of data because, it doesn't make sense to have the total on the pie chart. That just kind of confuses everything. So we'll want to do one more step, which is actually our cleaner data 6, which is going to take the cleaner data 5, and we're going to drop those two column row names. So total and in-state subtotal. Those are the two names. So here's in-state subtotal, and here's actually total, that big pink one here. Those are the two ones that we want to get rid of because they're not, what we actually want. So that'll become cleaner data 6, and we'll go ahead and create that plot. So as you can see, when I ran that, I got this, new chart, which you can see undergraduate out of state. That's a huge proportion of the tuition revenues William & Mary brings in. Undergraduate in-state, the blue, is another very, very large chunk. And everything else is about the other 25%. So our graduate and professional is not a very large kind of tuition moneymaker for the university. So that's it for loading in PDF data through Python. Obviously, there are lots of other sources of information other than what we went over in this series, but we're going to kind of call it there, and we'll be exploring a lot of other data types as we go forward through this class.